The workshop will begin shortly, just waiting for our audience members to join in. Thank you for your patience. Hello, everyone. My name is Natalia Wilson, and I welcome you all to KiwiTech's 808 workshop for startups and entrepreneurs to help them navigate the challenges of starting a business, making it sustainable, and taking it to the next level. Today, we have a mentor session on operational efficiency for startups by Sharad Singh, CEO at Trivium. Before we begin with our session of the day, I'd like to invite Karandeep Sodhi, Senior Manager, Strategic Partnership, KiwiTech, to give a quick overview of the company. Over to you, Karandeep.
Thanks a lot for the introduction, Natalia, and the opportunity to actually present KiwiTech in front of our esteemed guest today. Please let me know whenever you can see my screen. I hope it's visible now.
Yeah, all good.
Right. Perfect. So welcome everyone to today's event, Startup Workshop. Now, talking about KiwiTech, we are a global community, or rather an ecosystem of innovators, investors, mentors, enterprises, and a lot of corporate communities as well. Now, till date, we are an ecosystem today of about more than 500 portfolio companies. We built an investor network of more than 3,000 investors, through which we've helped a lot of our founding partners raise more than 125 million US dollars. Now, we also have more than 300 mentors within the ecosystem to help support a lot of these early to growth stage founders. And most of them come from the investor network, but we do have a lot of successful founders as well. Now, when KiwiTech also invest technology development services in exchange for equity. And till date, we've invested more than 100 million US dollars worth of technology development services in exchange for equity. And we do have equity standings in a lot of our portfolio companies. Now, all of this kind of comes together through the networking events that we host. And on an average, we host about 100 events annually. Now, talking about the roadmap and milestones of KiwiTech, in 2012, the founders of KiwiTech had a pretty successful exit from another technology content company that they had scaled to 5,000 employee organization, had a pretty successful exit of 144 million US dollars. And in 2013 is when we launched the KiwiTech Startup Program. Now, over the years, we understood the need or just the support in terms of helping our founders raise capital. So in 2017, we started with our KiwiTech demo days, and we had by that time scaled to 100 plus portfolio company as well. In 2019, we launched our 808 Startup Series, the Entrepreneur Workshop that you're attending today as well. We also expanded into the Middle East region, and in 2020 and 2021, we already had expanded into an ecosystem of more than 500 portfolio companies. We acquired a New York-based financial company called Graphite Financial. We launched our go-to-market and crowdfunding services, and there are already 3 acquisitions more in pipeline. Our vision is targeting 100 portfolio companies to exit at a minimum of 100 million US dollars. And we're already on track to becoming an ecosystem of 1,000 plus portfolio companies. Now, about the services, we offer a variety of services. Now, in terms of technology development, this is where we started off with. We have a team of more than 600 engineers very highly skilled engineers. We built more than 2,000 products. And as I mentioned, currently as a part of our portfolio, we do have close to 500, 550 organizations. We also provide technical due diligence for finance and accounting. We acquired Graphite Financial based out of New York. We also host events as a service. We host a lot of startup pitch events, workshops, innovation hackathon, investor summits, and conferences for a lot of organizations. We also have in-house marketing support to provide with go-to-market strategies depending on your requirements in terms of SEO, SEM, SMM, etc. And also for crowdfunding, we've partnered with vFunder and Start Engine to just provide that extra benefit to strategize your campaigns according to these platforms, or again, depending on the requirements that you might have. Now, as I mentioned, all of this comes together through the events that we host. We've been hosting a variety of events from region-specific to stage of your business. For example, our angel investor panel, family office panels, venture capital panel, which we're hosting tomorrow as well. Of course, our entrepreneur workshops. We even hosted Qatar's first ever e-commerce hackathon as well, and the biggest 24-hour virtual pitch event. And today, I really welcome all of you to our entrepreneur workshop, where Sharad Singh, the CEO of Trivium, would be speaking about operational efficiency for startups. So really thank you, Sharad, for taking out the time. And back to the team. Thank you so much for the opportunity.
Thank you so much, Karandeep. Before we go on to the session, we have a banner announcement. We have recently introduced a referral program at KiwiTech. This program rewards anyone who contributes to our fruitful introductions to our company. Over the years, we have built this robust ecosystem of startups with the help of your trust and subsequent referrals. We realize that it is time we give due credit to this trust through our referral program incentives. So if you know someone looking for tech development, support to scale, join our referral program and follow the mentioned steps shown on your screen, or visit our website, www.kiwitech.com/referral program to learn more. Contribute to our growth journey and earn incentives for your trust in us. And now I would like to invite Sharad Singh, CEO at Trivium, to begin with his session. Over to you, Sharad.
Thank you. Pleasure being here with everyone. Thanks for your time. I guess one quick thing I should do is give background on Trivium and what we do before I jump into hopefully providing some information that many of you can find useful. I've done the same talk with universities and other with the accelerators, and most people have found some benefit out of it. So I'll make it quick about the company. We focus on accounting, finance, HR, and tax for primarily early to mid-stage tech companies and biotech companies. We're based out of Silicon Valley with offices around the globe. In the last, 12 to 18 months, we've had clients of ours raise over $150 million. Just this week, had a call with a former client of ours that we helped transition to an in-house team. They're raising a $500 million round, which was very impressive in this current climate, which we'll also talk about, what we're seeing on the ground here. We have about 100 or so folks. We've seen exits, I think in plus 50 plus companies. And we're usually involved with even at the earliest stage of the idea with no funding all the way through to the acquisition, or now we have a client going IPO as well. So that's a little bit about us. And I will now quickly jump into this presentation. If you have any questions or comments and want to jump in, please just click the raise a hand. Happy to stop my portion of the presentation and answer questions in real time. And I will not be able to see, I don't think, the hands raised. So Natalia, I will use your help and expertise.
Yes, sir. So any questions that come in, I will let you know. You're on mute, Sharad.
All right. I think it muted me again when I presented, right?
Yeah, it did.
Okay. Let me open it up the way we had it earlier. And so essentially the talk is going to be about early to mid-stage companies and the issues they face and see. And again, every company is different. Everyone has a different technology. But what we're trying to go over is the general issues that most people come.
I'm so sorry, Sharad, but you're on mute again.
Huh. I don't know
Yeah.
why it keeps muting me. It wasn't muting me earlier.
Yeah. Do you want me to share the presentation?
Yeah, that'd be great. If you could share what I sent you, that'd be great. And it's not that many slides. It's more just discussion topics.
Let me know if you can see the slides.
Yep, I can see them. So awesome. Thank you. So accounting, finance, people ops, and insurance. So people ops can be considered HR, and insurance is going to be going into not only your employees in the US, but also for your corporate insurances. So next slide, please. All right. So founders usually, when you're early stage, the big concerns are compliances. What do I really have to do? That's where things start for most founders is I do not want to get penalized or fined or do anything that the IRS or state agencies come after me for. So we will talk about those mandatory compliances, mandatory things that startups and early stage companies have to do. And then also what are the best practices that some of the best companies we've seen that have grown and have had successful exits, what they have done as well. Next slide, please. All right, so before we start, I think it's a good idea to just get the topics and the lingo down. So accounting and finance are very different. Most of you probably know this, but accounting is mainly your day-to-day ledger of keeping track of the company financials and the transactions and the performance, cash flows, where you stand in your financial position stands during that day. Finance, on the other hand, is a more of a strategic department. This department controls the financials and the money that's in the company and how it will be spent, where it'll be allocated, what the company goals are, how we will effectively last to complete those goals, and what strategies we should use for our monetary capital to achieve those goals. So is it raising more money? Is it not raising money? Is it taking a loan so we hit a certain goal? So obviously, in order to do that, you need to have a solid accounting team that tells you your current financial position and your projected financial position, so the finance team can make that strategic decision. Human resources is everyone's familiar with. It's your people ops. It's everything to do with your people. This day, in age, the people, a year and a half ago is very different. It was how are we going to hire as many people as we can and make our company look great, provide an incredible experience when people on board, and we're trying to fight for their best talent. It's changed a little bit out here. It's how do we keep the people we want to keep, but we have to shed some fat on the company. How do we take care of the people we're having to let go? How do we not get sued? How can we be compliant while keeping a good culture? So that's the HR piece. Insurance is essentially one of those things that you pay for, but you hope you never use, right? But on this side, on the corporate insurance side in the US, and it's very, very complicated, there's an employee medical insurances that companies contribute to. And we'll get into detail on that. And then there's also insurance that protects the company from unforeseen events, which we'll also discuss. Next slide, please. Any questions about any of those so far, if I wasn't clear? No? Okay, cool. So we are going to now discuss the requirements and best practices as I shared earlier. Next slide, please. All right, accounting. Why do you need to have accounting? And it is in some ways, it could be very little or it could be a lot, but it is required. Every company in the United States has to file taxes when they incorporate. I'll give you a bit of advice that I've been giving this week as US, company tax filings are due in a couple weeks here. A lot of clients have been reaching out, some companies from India, some companies from around the country in the United States, that they incorporated in December last year, and they didn't realize now they have to do tax filings. Even if they have nothing they did, they still have to do a tax filing. It's like if as a person, working or not working, you still have to file 0 taxes. So the filing is required. And so this is some advice you can give your friends. This is a fun one. It'll save everyone money. if you're looking at incorporating and starting a company and it's October, November-ish, just wait until January. You won't have to do the filing for that year. If you can hold off 2-3 months, you save $1,500 to $2,500. So all these people that have been reaching out this week to get their taxes done, and they started their company in December, if they just waited 2 weeks, it would have saved them $3,000. And so how does that tie into accounting? Before we file their taxes, we have to create some sort of financial record for their books for 2022 and close it off that we could submit to a tax preparer. So accounting is required once you start. So there's two types of accounting. There's cash basis, which is most of your mom and pop shops, your local grocery stores or mechanic shops, they usually use cash basis. It's essentially, a day-to-day ledger of where your cash position is. Then there's accrual accounting. Accrual-based accounting is what's used by larger companies. It provides a more accurate view of the company's health because it includes what is due in the future and what is going to be received in the future. This is a method that's used by most large companies and most startups that are raising capital. You can get by with cash accounting. It's a lot cheaper to do, but eventually you'll most likely have to get to accrual accounting. So you can imagine it if you're a SaaS company, you sign a contract for $120,000 for 12-month contract. And some people who've done cash accounting, they might account for that as $120,000 the day they signed the contract. But technically it's not correct because they didn't receive $120,000 that day. They're going to receive $10,000 a month. So accrual base would be categorizing it correctly and having that cash position show, and forecast what income and outflowing money is going to be taking place. In the United States, GAAP accounting is the standard that we live by, right? I think internationally it's a FASB and IFRS. So GAAP accounting is the one that's used in the United States. This is taking your accrual accounting to the next level. If you tell people you do GAAP accounting and you're a growing company, your audit firms, your partners, your investors would be very, very pleased to hear that. Not always necessary, but recommended. Next slide, please. So quick takeaways on this. So accrual accounting is preferred over cash accounting. You can get away with cash accounting. You may just do cash accounting your first year in business so you could file taxes. Filing taxes is required. So some accounting you might be able to do it yourself is required. You should strive as a company for GAAP accounting as you continue to grow. Accounting obviously gives you a very accurate picture of your company, and proper accounting enables the CEOs and to forecast and report CFOs if you're big enough to have a CFO. And again, required to file taxes. Now I love talking about problems that I won't speak about our particular clients as much as I will just folks I know at different companies. So an example of one of my friends who had a company, and this is again such a simple thing that many of you may come across or may have thought of doing. It's actually a nice gesture. So he had a company, is 15 people or so, a SaaS company doing digital. They're doing digital marketing analytics, and he had an intern come work for him, and he let the intern, gave him the company laptop, and as a farewell gift said, just keep the laptop. You're going back to college. It's a really nice MacBook Air. Just keep it. No worries. Company can afford the $1,500. When the company was being acquired by a large public company, they then asked for all the assets of the company. And that laptop was an asset of the company that was tagged, and it was on a ledger because everything was done properly, and it was the company had been audited and all the accounting rules were proper. If you buy company equipment, it should be logged. And the acquiring company said, we cannot acquire this company until we have all 15 laptops. We only have 14. Where is this 15th laptop? And to the CEO, it was a very simple thing that, who cares? We gave it to an intern. But to the acquiring company, the deal was put on hold and the CEO's millions of dollars that he was making was put on hold until that laptop was found, retrieved, and collected. I've had a client that said, we're letting go our employees. The least we can do is let them have the laptop they were using. We don't need to ask for it back. I vehemently disagree. You do, and even if you can wipe it clean, why not just take the laptop back? So in the future, if you're getting acquired or getting investment, you have the hard asset, the company property in hand. Give someone $1,000 gift card to go buy a laptop, or give them a severance payment. So way better ways of doing things than to give out company assets with IP on them. Headspin is a fun one. Headspin CEO, you could Google this, raised $100 million from very, very prominent funds. I think Google Ventures was one of them. And he raised $100 million on $1 billion valuation. And the reason he raised this money was because he claimed he was doing 100 million in revenue. Essentially what was happening, one of the things that was happening was, this again, from what I've learned, so not everything is fact, this is allegedly, he or the company was categorizing sales as an annual number when it was a prolonged period. So for example, if you sign 10 deals that are 10-year long contracts at $10 million each, that's not $100 million in revenue you generated that year. Accrual-based accounting would tell you that's actually $10 million in revenue you've signed up for annually. And so when companies are valued, he was valued at $100 million run rate. So 10x software multiple for valuation, good deal for investors. They're making 100 million. They're bringing in 100 million a year. So they are worth $1 billion. So great. They invested. Well, when they did some digging, it was not that number. It was more like a 10 or 20 million a year in revenue. So the company on that same formula should be a $200 million company. So he was fired, and they are looking at charging him up to 20 years in jail for that. It is his head on the line. So I think there was probably a lot of founders on this call. Really, really understand who you're working with on your finances. Your neck is on the line. So please do everything correctly. And another example is someone I didn't really know I met. So I met the CEO of Slink a couple of years ago, and one of our current clients was like, "Hey, did you see what happened to that guy you introduced me to?" And I was like, "I don't really remember this guy." But I Googled him and I started reading about what happened. He was a normal guy who was selling TVs at a department store, who then ended up starting a company in the logistics space. The company did okay, did well. Then it raised, I think, $40-50 million from Goldman Sachs. Again, these are prominent investors. And this guy then bought himself a $15 million plane, started looking at buying soccer teams in Europe, and didn't pay employees for 3 months with the company money. So he is also looking at possible jail time. I just don't understand how people can do this. He had a CFO, but the CFO claims that this guy kept money in separate accounts and was hiding things. So if you are a CFO on the call or a finance person, again, if something's fishy or smells fishy, it's probably fishy. So just a couple examples there on accounting. Any accounting related questions from anyone? Nope. I see there's 3 in the chat. Yes, you will get the copy of slides. But again, these aren't legal advice. This is just, my thoughts on a couple things. So next slide, please. Finance, important finance team to ensure the company funds are managed properly to achieve company goals. The finance, whereas in accounting, you might have a controller, an accountant, or a senior accountant, bookkeeper. In finance, the main 2 positions are chief financial officer, which is essentially the co-pilot to the CEO, helping the CEO make the right decisions, plan for what's ahead, plan for unforeseen events, which are taking place right now for a ton of companies. and a VP of finance who's a step below. Sometimes, many times, early, company with only 100 people or so will only have one of these positions. A VP of finance is more of a hybrid between like a controller and a CFO. A CFO is an actual officer of the company, which carries a lot of legal liability. So if someone does not want to be your CFO, and they want to be a VP of finance, they're making a conscious decision to not have legal liability. It sounds cool to be an officer of a company, but with that comes a lot of unforeseen headaches if things go wrong. The finance team, and this is something we do quite often, is the liaison with the investors. So the CEO may want to talk about company overall strategy, talk about sales, forecasting, competitive landscape. The finance team usually discusses monetary positions, what they need to achieve the goals, what milestones they are looking to hit, and what the run rate will be, the timeline will be, and then allocating the budget and capital accordingly. How, advising the CEO, running models. It takes us 10 salespeople to achieve $1 million in sales. Each salesperson is $100,000. Commission structure is, Y. So 100,000 plus Y equals cost to company of 150,000 per salesperson. So does it make sense for us to allocate money here versus there? Also helps in writing the story of the company and the financials. It's very, very hard to pitch with a bad story. So it essentially comes down to, what is the story of your company? I've seen people come to our office and say, I'm going to get 20,000 devices, a hardware company, devices out in the next 2 years. And then the question is, well, do you know how much it's going to cost you to make a device? And they say, yeah, it's going to cost about $20. And then it's like, how much money are you looking to raise? And they'll say $1 million. Like, that doesn't make any sense. You obviously don't have a finance person that's modeling this for you. So have the financial model worked out, what's thought through or vetted. I'm sure there's people on this call or companies like ours who could review things for you and kind of give you a pointers on if the story makes sense or not. Investors, I had dinner last night with an investor, and someone came by to pitch him while we're at dinner. It's a large venture firm, and the story just has to make sense. They're always looking to poke holes, and finance is one of those things where most investors have significant background in finance. This guy yesterday was from my investment banking firm and has done a lot of M&A. And so if he's looking at a spreadsheet or a business plan, finance is the first thing you could poke holes in. He might not be able to poke holes in your marketing strategy or your team and your team's background, but they can probably see fairly quickly if your financial model makes sense or not. And again, the right finance person is also side by side with the CEO, helping them, navigate any legal issues and headaches. Any questions here? Nope. Okay. Next slide, please. People ops. This is where I fit in. I'm a chief people officer, VP of HR for about 40, 50 startups. Some of them are small. Most of them are small now. I used to have a couple big ones that I moved off of. Most recently was a company that was started in India. The founders came to the United States, and it became a unicorn in 4 years. So I was there through that whole journey while running Trivium and being at Trivium. So I've seen quite a bit. That was a very fun place to work and fun place to be in people ops because the founders cared a lot about every employee. They were able to build a great culture, and that's what their main focus was. So our focus there in people ops was to retain the great talent we were adding, find the best people in the industry to join the company, and then create a structure where everyone was thriving and making the money and equity that they wanted to make as the company continued to grow. So that was our main focus. Luckily, we didn't have to worry about too much compliance related activity because they were so thorough and wanted everything done properly. But there are many rules. Each state in the United States has different HR rules, California being one of the toughest. I have a client right now that we're looking to drop on the HR side because they let go of someone. They haven't paid the final day's wages yet because they don't have money um, to pay this final employee. And this employee can sue them for $3,000 per day, every day. So it's been mentioned to them. If they were going to let go of this person, they should have thought about this a month or two ago, where your CFO, which they don't have, would have helped them in forecasting that we need to have money to pay our people if we're going to let them go, because we can keep digging ourselves in a deeper hole. So in the HR, there's, again, the chief people officer, VP of HR. There's the generalist, who's your day-to-day onboarding, offboarding, your frontline, defense for most of your employees. There's payroll team, which is going to be updating payroll, processing payroll, and then there's a recruiting side to add talent. A lot of my friends who are in recruiting have seen their jobs go away in the last 6 to 8 months. As you can imagine, big companies are cutting down on hiring, and the first thing they let go are recruiting people. And then slowly they let go HR folks too. So why is it important? So these are some of the things I've seen. A continuity of team will destroy competition. What I mean by that is, if you have an incredible founding group of 10, 15 people that are there to build the product or company, and you can keep them there from years at a time, instead of replacing senior management every 6 months or 8 months, or having a new person come in and take over a project that someone else is not the right fit for. Those companies have excelled. Your first few months and years will be the least amount of capital you have in the company. It'll be the most important time on building the team and the culture. Compliance, you do not want headaches when it comes to legalese, because if you're raising money, you're raising funding. If you're being sued by an employee, you have to disclose it. If you're being audited and issues happening from the employment department, you have to disclose it. Again, why give your investors or anyone that's looking at your company for an acquisition a reason to stop or to question your abilities to run that company? Company culture, right now, it's ever more than ever, it's been important to have a good company culture, because even with the layoffs, you want to keep the people you want to keep. And a strong culture will do that. People will stay for a culture. And we have seen companies go through tough times, but people believe in the mission, they believed in each other, and they knew they would fight through it and make it to the other side. My first client was a company where 3 people were shot and killed by a former employee. The CEO, the VP of operations, and the VP of HR were killed by a former employee. The company eventually sold and had a successful exit. The people bonded together. They had a strong culture. They weren't going to let the company fail, and for themselves and to honor their lost colleagues. So culture goes a long ways. Many companies would have just folded and everyone would have quit, but people stuck together and healed and worked through it all. And then growth strategy. So what we've seen a lot over the last year was people would raise a large round of funding and then just hire, because that's what the thing was to do. Hire as many people as you can. A lot of those companies who hire too many folks are now letting go of people. So it's one thing to hire, hire 100% of folks and let go the 10% extra you hired. But what's foolish is when I see a company in the news, there's a company in San Francisco that said, we're going to do 4-day work weeks, and they're giving people promotions, and they were lending people money to exercise stock even. And then 1 month later, the people they promoted, the people they hired in the 4-day work week folks, they fired, they laid off 40% of the company. That just means that, one, the HR team's not either doing a good job, or 2, the finance team and the CFO and the strategy team is not working in hand with the HR team. Like, why are we hiring people if we're going to let go of 40% of our staff in a month? So that's why all these units need to speak to each other. Next slide, please. All right. Quick takeaways from this. Firing requires some legal compliances. Hiring has state, registrations you have to do, pay certain payroll taxes as a company. A lot of this can be automated, and if there's any questions on that, happy to answer. But a lot of these payroll companies will automate it for you. Firing people every state has its own rules. Know those rules, what they are, and consult. You don't have to consult a lawyer always, but consult someone in HR that you know or on your team on how to fire people properly. And that is one way HR can actually save the company money. And we do a lot of HR for our clients, and we, knock on wood, don't have to use attorneys. So instead of paying in the Bay Area, it's $1,500 an hour for attorneys. We can solve most of the problems, and talk to the employees that are leaving, and treat them like humans. And usually it's a smooth transition. This was, again, hiring is extremely competitive. Even though with all the layoffs, it's still going to be highly competitive for any early to mid-stage company, because you won't be paying as much as the big companies, and you'll be selling them employee on a dream. The stock is really not worth anything. The product's untested, so it's still very, very competitive. So you want to create a culture and a program for your company that's acceptable, right? You won't pay as much as Google. You won't pay as much for the insurances as Google. You won't have a bus taking employees to work like Google. But what can you do? What can you build there that will have people want to join your company outside of technology? Issues, I think, things to avoid. Always try to, if you're going to let go of someone, have a separation agreement. You're going to pay some severance, but having a separation agreement, they essentially absolve the company and management of any wrongdoing. So it's nice to have. And it's also good to treat an employee well on their way out. For a monetary, for a sensible sum, 2 weeks pay, 1 month pay, whatever it is, you treat someone well as they leave, and they also absolve the company of any legal liability, which again will be coming up when you're getting due diligence done for investment or an acquisition. I've seen companies that have said we're going to do 10 million in sales. They've hired us a VP of sales, and the VP of sales has sued the company and said we were doing 1 million in sales. This 10 million forecast was way off. They've sued the company for hiring under false pretenses, and got a lot of money from the company. So when you're hiring folks, be very, very careful on what you're saying about the company, and do not overly exaggerate or optimistically state numbers that you'd hope you hit, but may not hit. Pay people on their final day. I've shared about employees becoming violent, being violent. There's tons of stories there with people that are, the last few years, I think people have gotten a little tense with COVID, and even before COVID, threatening each other and having mental breakdowns. So be on top of that, have an outlet for employees. Have your employees be able to share with you if someone said something odd. We had a client with a meeting with the CTO, who's a PhD, tell the CEO and the VP of sales that he has guns at home and his wife is capable of taking care of the kids without him. And what goes around comes around. Like, that was his statement. And like, how do you deal with that? So a lot of these things you have to think through, and they're very unique situations, but thank goodness they had us that they could talk to. We could address the situation as a third party and kind of guide everyone to a sensible path, right? Maybe the CEO would have said, let's just fire this guy, he's crazy. And that would have led to someone being retaliatory. But having a breather, talk it through, treat everyone well, distance everyone from the situation for a little bit, calmly got us out of that situation, got the company out of that situation. Employees are very knowledgeable. If something feels odd, it could be. We had a client that hired an employee, and she made a claim of assault because one employee hugged her, then claimed that the company was racist because they didn't eat the food she brought. And then had like 5 or 6 complaints in writing to the CEO, which were all very odd. And it was all very systematic on her end. And the CEO wanted to fire her right away and said, I can't have someone like this ruining our culture. We had to tell him to take a deep breath and just step away from the situation. We stepped in, ran an investigation, we're on her side to make sure that none of this was actually happening. And she actually resigned, didn't pay any severance fees, did not pay any lawyer fees. And the employee actually said, I will actually leave this company, because she was not expecting us to deal with the situation that way. Other thing is, when you let go of people, you now have how there's Yelp reviews for restaurants. You also have Glassdoor for your company. So you don't want a low Glassdoor rating, because that will impede on you hiring the best talent. So that's one thing to think about as well. And then also, people are now changing jobs via FedEx. So what we mean by that is, people's kids that we know are getting laptops from different companies that are coming in, that they just started working for a new company, this quiet quitting or whatever you can call it, but they have no tie to the company. So you don't even know if they're interviewing somewhere. They might not even share what's going on with them, or if they're unhappy. So that's where a strong culture comes to impact the company as well. You want to know how your employees are feeling, how they're doing. This new generation wants to feel connected to a company, not just for the work they're doing, but what the company's objectives are, what their goals are, how they're impacting society. So the future employees have a different, not all of them, but a lot of them have a different need than maybe generations past. So even my generation, I'm 40, and sometimes I don't understand how a 22-year-old does not want to work 70 hours a week to make twice as much money, but they want to go surfing, and they want their work-life balance, and they want to be a part of something that's bigger than them, and they want to work on clean tech companies rather than companies that are creating IoT devices, because they don't want to deal with plastics. And these are accountants, right? But people have deeper connection to the work they're doing these days. Next slide. Any questions there? All right, next slide. How am I doing on time? Okay. Am I good on time? This is pretty much gonna, this will be the last piece, and then we'll have some questions if anyone has questions. But I think we're good on time so far, right?
Yes, sure. It's fine.
Okay, great. Insurance. Why is it necessary to have insurance? Some insurances are required by law. In the United States, if you have employees, most likely you'll be required by law to have workers' comp insurance. What is workers' comp insurance? It is if your employee's on the job and gets hurt on the job, this insurance that you have pays them for some of the wages lost because they got hurt while working for you. So that's one of the mandatory insurances. Another one that's close to mandatory that you want to have is a general liability. And their definitions are in here. You can take a look at it. But general liability and workers' comp are usually what every somewhat funded, in action, company that's up and running, those are insurances they have. Fairly inexpensive insurances. Workers' comp, I believe, is, I think, $100 for every $100,000 in wages for people working in the office. So that's per year. So $1 million in payroll is going to be $1,000 a year for workers' comp insurance. And I think general liability is usually in the $500 to $1,500 range, depending on how much activity your company has, how many assets are in the office, all that good stuff. Directors and officers insurance. You're probably going to hear about this when you raise your first round of funding. When someone needs to sit on your board or become an officer of the company, and they're an investor, they're going to most likely require you to have D&O insurance, directors and officers insurance. And at some point, you may want to have it for yourself too. What it does is it protects you. What we saw the last few years, and it was tough to get this insurance because insurance agencies were getting nervous about COVID. How do we protect the CEO for wrongful termination if someone wants to sue the company or sue the CEO? Because they were afraid they're going to get sick. And so they didn't want to go to work, but the company fired them because they didn't hit their sales quota. So this D&O insurance could protect them from some of those liabilities. So insurance companies were very, very strict on who they would give this to. And it was a very tough time to get that insurance. But since then, it's come down in cost. It's roughly in the $5,000 to $10,000 range per year. Errors and emissions is if you have product that's going out. We have a company that dispenses chemicals in a pool automatically through their device. Their E&O insurance is pretty serious. You're putting a deadly chemical in a pool where kids might be swimming. What if something goes wrong? We need to protect the company, and also be able to provide for if something goes wrong to help not only the family who's impacted, but also maybe do a recall on product. There's recall insurance, there's all that stuff you can add on to. And then cyber is one that we are seeing quite a bit. We have it ourselves. Anyone doing transactions or holding information for customers should have cyber insurance. Again, all these insurances will have different limits, and you can usually negotiate down as much, you'll know how far you can go down. But for example, one of our customers said, you need to have a $5 million cyber limit. And the $5 million cyber limit's a $30,000 policy per year. And we're like, look, the deal is not worth much more than that. So we're not going to do it. We can do 1 million and it's, 5,000, but we're not doing 30,000. And they usually just come down. Not all, maybe, if you're a company dealing with the Fortune and your customer is a Fortune 50 company, you may not be able to talk them down, but then again, the deal hopefully is a lot bigger too. On the employee side, medical, dental, vision are the three insurances that companies offer. A Series A funded company, what we're seeing is 80% contribution of the cost from the company for employees and their dependents. That's kind of the benchmark we're seeing. Rates have gone up 10, 12% this year over last year. A lot of tough conversations being had. A family of four can cost a company $3,000 a month. I get the question quite a bit. What should I budget for a person I'm going to pay $100,000 to? Well, if it's an individual and they're in their 20s and they're on their parents' insurance, you budget $100,000 plus the payroll tax, which is roughly $10,000, so $110,000. If it's an employee who has a family of four and they need insurance, you're probably going to budget another $30,000 per year. So that same position now is $140,000. But you cannot discriminate. You cannot ask people, will they be on the insurance if they're married, if they have kids? You can't ask that question. But just remember that this cost is there. And the other insurance or benefit that companies provide is 401k, which is their retirement savings account. Usually you can get this through your payroll provider, but there's other providers that are there too that they'll put this plan together for about $1,000 a year, $1,500 a year. All right, next slide. I think that's a quick takeaways. They're the examples of the insurances and how they would be used. General liability is if there's a flood or fire. We had a pipe burst in our office. Our general liability insurance covered the damage. Workers' comp, while we had a fire or flood, we had the flood in the office, employee was cleaning up, slipped and fell, workers' comp would cover that. And the D&O I explained, E&O I explained, cyber, and I've explained. And just on how this ties into HR and finance and everything, as you can see, they all go hand in hand. Finance needs to forecast properly how many people we're going to hire and what the cost would be. HR would be helping put the plans in place with the insurance folks so they can hire the best people. And the company has to make a decision on, what kind of plan they want to offer. We have a client that reached out and said, I only want to pay 50%, or I want to pay the minimum that I have to pay. And the minimum is, I believe, 50% for the employee and 0 for dependents. So he's like, okay, I have a budget. I'm going to pay for this position. It's going to be a sales rep. I'm going to pay $80,000 a year. So I said, okay, $80,000 a year. And you're going to pay this small amount. You kind of have limited yourself to who will take this position. If you have a family of 4 and you're very good for this job, you won't take this position because you're essentially going to be paying the bulk of this cost out of pocket for your insurances. So you make $80,000, but you're paying $2,500 a month out of pocket for insurance. You're actually only making $50,000. So You want to have a plan that scales and that helps you hire the best talent, and not be short-sighted. Any questions on insurance? Nope. Okay, next slide, please. I think that might be it. So yeah, if everything's properly done, these departments speak to one another, and it should actually help your company grow, not be a hindrance. Our best clients utilize services properly. They have check-ins. They align. They understand where each one of these falls and how it's working. Those who think it's just an unnecessary evil that they have to do, or it's a pain to have it, obviously won't get the full benefit of having a properly run department. Next slide, please. All right, that's about it. Any questions, thoughts? Happy to answer.
All right. Thank you so much, Sharad, for that insightful presentation. So we do have a question in the chat. At what stage should a startup begin auditing their books?
Very good question. I think I'm going to answer this in an interesting way. So auditing type of work and like tax filing work is done by CPAs. You do not need a CPA to do accounting. So you do your accounting, you should do your accounting, like we said, like right away. It shouldn't be that expensive to do your basic accounting. Auditing is something that's required usually for something that's taking place. So Sequoia is investing in your companies may require audited financials. After what's happened with FTX, after what happened with that company I shared earlier, Headspace and Slink and others, they may, when investing a large round, require audited financials. I think you should wait as long as you can, to be honest. Audits are very expensive and time consuming. You'll need to have like someone like us or an accounting team or a person there working fairly hand in hand with the auditing firm, and audits start at $25,000, $30,000 where they start. So I would say if you have several years under your belt, several years of sales, maybe a year or two of sales, and you're looking to raise a large round, you want to just, make sure everything's tight. You're looking to maybe exit the company in down the line. Then an audit's a good idea for you. I hope that kind of answered your question. I hope it does, James. But I would say the first year in the company, no need. Second year, probably no need. Second year, you're probably raising some seed funding. Let's just say it's 500,000 to 2 million, and it gets you to another 24 months where you're launching the product or have beta customers. When you're launching and have beta customers, you're then looking down the horizon a bit, maybe 6 months down the line, that you need to raise a $10, $12 million round. I think a Series A $10, $12 million round, you could get by without audited financials. You should be able to take a look at your financials and your books, and it should make sense to you. You're raising that large round. They might say, hey, we're going to invest in you, but every year we want audited financials done. And at that point, you get things done. And then you just make that decision like, hey, I don't want to spend $50,000 for a $10 million round to do this. We will provide financials. We're happy to dig through them. We have an accounting team. That's a discussion you can have. Valuation usually comes, it's a good question, usually comes whenever there's like a priced round. And you want, believe it or not, you're as in when you before you get a lot of large institutional money, you want to price your stock as low as you can. So when you have employees join, they're not, if you have an employee join, you give them 100,000 shares, but your valuation says, and you're month 8 of the company, it's the first year, and the stock's worth $1. No one's going to be able to exercise the stock for $1, right? If someone's joining the company at that early stage, you want that stock to be a penny. And so that there's a lot of upside for employees. So I would say evaluation would be when you're looking to do a priced large round of investment. It wouldn't be when you're a seed. It wouldn't be a friends and family round. It'd probably be when you're at that stage, what we're discussing, when you're raising the $10 to $12 million round. You're welcome, Alicia.
All right. In the meantime, we get more questions. We do have questions for you. What are the common mistakes you've observed in startups making in accounting, HR, insurance, and finance?
Yeah, great question. I will kind of give a macro answer to this. There's two types of founders. There's ones that need to know how everything is going. And that's a mistake I've seen where they just want to, they hyper, they're smart people. Founders are usually, smart folks that like to know things, and they're building something, that no one else has built. So they'll get focused on learning about something that has nothing to do with their business or product. Like, that's what you're paying us to do. So I actually dropped a customer as a small venture firm, and they had an employee that was running the accelerator, and I said, we can't work with this person anymore because we're not a university, and your person's just trying to learn, and nothing's getting done, right? So that's an issue where people are just learning and no action's ever taken. Another mistake on the other side is ignoring these functions, running blind, right? Employees see it. Founders who don't respond to an email about expense reports, it bothers employees. If you're not answering or looking at insurance policies, well, this affects their family. They have kids, they have insurances they need. So then the other side is not caring enough and just focusing only on the product and sales, and forgetting that there's a lot of other activities that come with running a company. You can't just do the things you want to do. And I really want to tell this to a ton of our clients. They're usually the younger ones that are like, hey, I just want to go code. I'll get to your, here's an easy one for you guys. Everyone will like this one. So there's a bank relationship we have at Trivium that if you deposit, let's just say it's $10 million. It's a large round, right? So if you deposit $5 million or $10 million, they'll give you 5% on the money for 12 months. So essentially $10 million, you get $500,000. We have a client that raised $40 million. They have 15 or 20 people. They're not going to spend most of it. They've scaled back, and this money's going to last them 4 years. I called him, texted him, and emailed him. This is the difference between a technical founder and a business founder. This is a technical founder. And I said, hey, I have something that'll take 5 minutes of your time. I just want to explain to you, and I'll get you $500,000. It'll pay for all of our services for the next 5 years. And he said, I don't have time. We have a product launch, and I have a board meeting coming up in 2 weeks. I said, 10 minutes, $500,000. No catches, no catch. This is a publicly traded, bank that I did not have time for it. I personally have stopped caring about his company because I realized that he doesn't care about it. All he cares about is his product. So caring about the product is not the same as caring about your company. So that's a common issue that I've seen happen quite a bit.
Okay.
This is free money, $500,000. I just don't understand.
Okay. Okay. So the next one would be, what have you seen in common with successful startups?
Successful startups all have really exceptional people. They have a great idea, but they have exceptional teams and people who work together, who have honest dialogue. They're there for the same reason. The product doesn't, it never works right away, but they battle through it. They make it better. They have each other's back. They see the company through. The continuity of teams. There's a company I work with called VeloCloud. I was there before they had payroll. In Sanjay Upal, we don't talk anymore. He's a big deal at VMware now, maybe like the third or fourth highest guy there. He built this company, and I learned a lot from how he thought about the team. Any question I would come to him for that was monetary or anything like that, he would say, how does it impact the people working here? Even when there were 10 people, 50 people, 100 people. I came to him and was like, look, insurance costs are going up. We have this other option that could save they're going up 15%. This other option is 10%. And he said, well, how does it impact people if we make that change to 10%? I said, well, they'll have new insurances. We'll have to do some new paperwork. He said, everyone's focused. Let's let everyone be focused. We'll absorb the cost. Let everything keep going the way it is. Let's not ruin any momentum. Even that slightest bit of momentum, right? It'll be an hour or two meeting. That's it. He did not want any momentum loss. He didn't want anyone thinking about anything other than everything's going well. Let's just keep pushing forward. That I would think would be on my, again, I might be biased because I'm on the HR side, but that's one. But on the finance accounting side, so the thing is, everyone has smart people and everyone has a great idea. How are you going to execute on it? So I always think, like, people execute, the product gets built.
Okay, I think we have time to take just one last question. What are the concerns founders should have in the economic climate next year?
Oh shoot, I gotta jump off a call. I have another call here at 12. It's a pretty big call for me. Cut costs, extend burn rate. Plan for unforeseen events. Make it to the other side. The headwinds on the plane are coming strong. Preserve fuel. Wait out this time. Save some money to get through these headwinds. Make it to the other side.
Okay, I think Sharad, it's okay. I know you just had a call, so I think we'll let you go, and it's about to wrap up as well. So thank you so much for joining us today and giving that session. Really means a lot. Thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone. Wish everyone well. Happy to chat one-on-one if you'd like.
Thank you.
Thanks, Natalia.
And with that, I'd like to thank, of course, Sharad and our guests for joining us today. And we will be back soon with more workshops. Also, apart from the workshops we have more upcoming events, as you can see on screen. And you can check out our KiwiTech website for the same. Do join us, and we would love to host you on those events as well. Till then, thank you. Have a great day ahead.